Hey everyone, it's Foxx from modelmaking.guru here, back with part 7 of our build of the mega size Gundam RX-78-2. Now, you remember in the last episode we gunmetal coated all the inner armour parts, so the inner frame parts. What we're going to be doing next is doing some dry brushing with Tamiya Chrome Silver. Let me just move this in so you can see. And my camera seems to have started doing autofocus for some bizarre reason, which is quite cool. Some Tamiya X11 Chrome Silver. X suggests it's a gloss colour, which it is. Now, remember I said that the gunmetal came out a little dark. The Chrome Silver is going to brighten it up and add a little bit of scuffing and scraping. If you watch my Freedom Gundam, you'll know how this goes. Just has a little bit of scuffing and scraping and a little more shininess and a little more silveriness. So I'll just bring in a piece for you to look at. See if we can get to focus on this. There we go. Is it going to focus? Come on. Nope, you're not going to focus. Okay, I'll do it myself. So you can see here, this is a piece that was painted gunmetal, and now I've actually dry brushed some chrome silver on there, and it has rather a nice, slightly scuffy, scrapey look, but also retains its shine. Just makes it look a bit more metallic rather than just the gunmetal. A little bit more worn. A few places there's a blob of paint rather than a scuff of paint, and it just adds to the patina. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a piece that we've already painted, which is this one, which you can see is just bare gunmetal. Looks nice, but it still looks like a plastic that's been painted with gunmetal. So let's get this on the road. So, what do we need? We've got our Tamiya X11, which I'm going to give a bigger shake. Right, I've also got off screen, because you know it turns my screen green. Some blue tissue, but any tissue will do, and a flat chisel edge brush. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the brush, I'll bring it in this in just to see it, take the brush, dip it in the chrome silver, and then get most of it off on the tissue. That should be enough, and then it's really simple. What you do first is you check your focus, put it there. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to dry brush it. So I'm going to use it about that angle. You've seen me do it before. Not much paint on the brush, and I'm going to go up from the edges just so that it catches the edges and also has a slight stripe to it. I don't want it to be, I'm not painting this on, I'm just adding scraping. And dry brushing is great. It catches all around the edges here, you can see. It's a great way to add this. Very subtle, but you'll know it's there. And try and go from an edge in. It just gives that more scrapey look. And if you can try and do it like this, you'll get a radial effect. So it seems to come from the outside into the middle and not just randomly. And I'm going to put a bit more paint on my brush. Get it off on the paper, which, as I say, I'm not showing on screen because it makes everything go green. Do the same on this side. If you're wondering why I'm on this funky camera angle, it's because I've left my camera standy up type things somewhere, and all I've got is a little cobbled together thing to put the camera on, so it's a bit rubbish, but it works. So just going in, adding some scrapes. Again, go from the edges in rather than outwards. I'll show you in a second what I mean, what the effect I'm looking for. Do this top bit here. Some places you'll get a little bit more paint than you planned for. That's fine, because it looks like there's more tarnishing going on. And there's not a lot going on, almost nothing. But it's just making the edge even more shiny, because it's lighter than the gunmetal. Put a bit more paint on. Do a bit more on this front piece now. So I'm going to go in from the sides. Have I got this in shot? Yeah, I'm going to go in from the sides and just build it up. You can see that, hopefully. Just building this up. So again, I'm trying to keep the radial shape, so it seems to come like that. rather than just all being across or up and down. So I'm trying to follow the shape of the circle. And then I'll put a little bit. And then once you've done all that around the edges, what you can do then is, when there's not much paint left on the brush, just go back and dab it on around areas where you want it to be a bit lighter. So say on that edge there I want it to be more, I'm just going to keep dabbing it till it builds that paint up. It's a bit like using a pastel at this point, because there's not much paint on there. And you'll get little patches that way. There's not much on this radial bit here, so I'm just going to push down a bit harder on the brush and get a bit more. And that is pretty much all after. So I'll just show you what I meant about the dark and light bits. Here, if I get the darn thing to focus, where's my... You see on this piece here, it's bright around the edges, but it's darker in the middle. And that's why you want to go from the edge in, from the edge up or down or in that way, and not just straight over the top. And not just left to right, because you want it to vary. But that's the effect we're looking for. You can see it again at that angle, you get the best idea. You can see here the light and dark. And it's purely because the gunmetal is a dark colour, that's why you get that nice contrast. And that's what I'm looking for. So that's that done. I've done it to all the rest of the interior frame pieces. So what I'll need to do next, I'll need to leave these to dry for an hour or two. And then we need to gloss varnish it. Now, if I'm not going to do this, but if you were going to paint different parts of your inner frame different colours, sorry for all the moving around. So say you wanted this inner circle, this ring here, say gold or something like that, or a different metallic colour, you'd obviously have to mask it off and airbrush it. You'd have to do this dry brushing first to scuff and scrape the chrome silver, then mask it off, and then paint your alternative metallic colour, and then while it's still masked off, scuff and scrape that with a relevant colour. If I painted that gold and then did this whole dry brushing with chrome silver, I'd be dry brushing gold with chrome silver, and that would just look stupid. I want to really dry brush it with something complementary to gold, like a lighter gold colour. Just to get the same scuff and scrape effect. You wouldn't want a pristine piece of, say, gold in the middle and then the silver bits on the outside looking all scuffed and scraped and worn. So you have to kind of plan ahead and do it in stages. So if I was doing masking off of that, I'd do all this. I've now done this dry brushing. I'd then go and let it dry, mask off that part, paint it gold, and do the same thing again with the dry brushing, but with a different colour that works with the gold. So I'll go and leave these to dry for a bit. When we come back, we will do a gloss coat with some Pledge multi-surface wax. So, back in a moment. Okay, right, all those parts have had about an hour to dry. Now we're going to put some gloss coat on them, just to protect that paint from what comes after that. I'm going to be using my old standby of Pledge multi-surface wax, also known as Future or Clear in various places. Don't use Pledge, I think it's called Final Finish or something like that. That's not this. It must say multi-surface wax, or if it says Future or Clear, you should be fine. Outside the UK, it's probably known as something else. There is a great website which tells you all about this and all the different brand names in different countries. I'll put the web address here. I think it's something like The Complete Future by Swannies Models. It's a really indispensable resource for this. Why am I using this? I think I've discussed it before, but it's a really good, quite tough acrylic gloss coat. Now you can use normal varnishes that come with your from your paint manufacturers, Tamiya, Vallejo, AK Interactive. Absolutely can use that. The only difference is this stuff for that massive bottle costs about £3, and it's just as good. It works fine. So I'd rather use this and spend £3 than spend 11 quid on a little bottle that's about this big. I've just decanted it into this. Some things to be aware of with this. It will gunk up your airbrush like nobody's business. So when you've finished spraying, try and limit your spray sessions if you can. If you have to go for more than, say, half an hour, stop, clear out the airbrush, do a full strip down, clean it, and then carry on. When you finish spraying with this, even if you're going to go and then spray paint on something else, do a full strip down. The reason being, this is a varnish. It will, or you know, it's an acrylic varnish effectively. It will gunk up your airbrush. What you can effectively do is varnish the inside of your airbrush. So just make sure when you use this, you do a full strip down and clean and get everything out, because it will gunk up. And after about half an hour, 45 minutes or so, you might start to see your airbrush struggling to spray. It's because it's basically varnishing the needle and the nozzle. So yeah, you don't want to take your time doing this. So how are we going to do it? Quite simple. Like with paints, you do a light mist coat first, and then you go ahead, give it a blast of air to dry it, and then you go ahead and you do your second coat, which is a proper coat, and air dry again, and maybe a third coat, depends on what you want. I'm going to be gloss varnishing this at the very end once everything's painted and before the weathering goes on anyway. So I might just do a dry coat and then a top coat on that, because all I really want at the minute is just to protect this paint from anything else that comes. So I have my my airbrush, which is my Neo 40 water. I shall put some of this in a magic cup. Do. I've just decanted it into this little bottle, dropper bottle, because it's easier basically than trying to get it out into the airbrush from a massive bottle like that. I'll turn on the extractor and the compressor, and away we shall go. Okay, so do a light mist coat first, and then a proper coat on top. So just a very gentle light mist coat. This just gets some varnish on the surface and gives the next coat something to grip onto. So it's not just gripping onto bare paint. Now this is quite thin stuff, so don't wave your brush about too much or you will end up spilling it everywhere out the cup. Okay, so I'm now going to dry it with some air, just to let that dry a little bit, ready for the next coat. And if I get a nice super shiny gloss coat now, that's great. If I don't, I'm not worried, because I'll be adding more of this later anyway. Then I can go in with a proper thicker coat. Let's go and do that now. And I'll give that a blast of air. I might do 2 coats. Now this stuff does have fantastic self-leveling properties, as I've said before. So don't worry if it doesn't look nice and smooth and even now. It will level itself out wonderfully. Bit of air, just drying it so the very surface of it is dry. Won't be dry to the touch, but it's dry enough for the next coat to go on. Again, it's vital if you can get one that you have a moisture trap on your airbrush, for this stage especially, because getting water into this is a pain in the butt. So if you can, make sure you have a moisture trap either on your airbrush or your compressor. And an inline one like this on the airbrush is much easier. So I'll do one more thicker coat. Being reasonably generous with it here. And that will do. That's now gloss varnish. So I'll jump to time lapse and I'll go and do the rest. Back in a moment. Okay, right, the gloss varnish has had time to dry overnight, and as I hope you can see now, it's looking nice and metallic-y. Bearing in mind this was just grey plastic, now it looks a lot more metal-y, and it's actually, the Chrome Silver's made it a lot lighter and more to what I was hoping it would come out like. More like the Freedom Gundam. Remember, I was worried it was too dark and just looked like sprayed on gunmetal. So you can see now it's looking much more, I can't really think what kind of metal it would be, steel maybe? Brushed clean steel, I don't know. And bearing in mind this is going to have more weathering on top, gunk washes and stuff, but I'm pretty happy with that. So what's next? Well, I was thinking last night about what I said about not painting the inner frame parts any other colours, and I changed my mind completely. So what I have done is I have masked off the four main parts of the body, of the inner frame, sorry, which is going to be the out of focus, back of the arms, just these two bits here, and on the back of the legs, this section here. And what we're going to do, I'm going to spray those gold. Now, I was originally hoping to be able to paint these Tamiya gold leaf, and then over with some clear yellow, clear yellow, just to make them even more goldy coloured. Unfortunately, I didn't plan on the fact that I didn't actually have any clear yellow. So fail. I thought I had some, but I couldn't find it. So we're just going to go ahead and spray them gold leaf. And when that's done, I'll need to go over with some clear pledge again. You may have noticed as well when I was filming the varnishing, I'd turn the joints around to spray into little nooks and crannies, but I haven't yet turned the other way to get the other side, so it's not a problem then if I have to go back with more gloss over the gold, because I've got to do that anyway. So it saves me doing it twice. And this is part of the whole thing about planning what you're doing. Try and plan ahead and see what you're going to be doing, just to minimise how much work you actually have to do. So this is going to be really straightforward, getting the magic airbrush of airbrushing. So I'm just going to give this Tamiya gold leaf, which is X12. X12 is a gloss colour. X tells you it's gloss. So we'll get some X12. We'll put, you see how much thinner I've got in there? It's about 2/3 of the cup. I'm just going to put in a little bit. Just about that much. That's probably actually too much. Before it has a chance to go anywhere, I'm going to munge it around. Similar to how I mix the gunmetal, this is probably a little bit thinner than the gunmetal. So we're going to mix that around. Just get it really in there. Okay, put the brush to one side. And what I will do first is, just to mix it even more, I'm going to put my compressor and fan on. Thusly. And then what we shall do is give it a little bit of a back blow, just to try and mix it even more. See it bubbling there nicely? Right. So what we're going to do is a light mist coat first. We're going to make sure the paint comes through first. There we go. Light mist coat first. Now the trick when masking is to not go in a direction that will get paint under the tape. So if the tape's here, I don't want to paint that way, because it'll go under the tape. I want to paint from this direction. Now it's hard because I've got tape there, so I'm just going to paint from straight on, 90 degrees from the top. So let's do this first. Okay, do that one. This one. This one. Nope. Now the airbrush is struggling a little bit because it keeps spluttering. So what I need to do is just kind of work some of this paint out. So let me just do a quick blast into here. Right, now it's doing it properly. You have to watch for that with metallic colours. They will splutter sometimes if they're too thick. So give it a quick blast of air on these. This is air only. Just to put a little dried layer on there. Now this one did go a bit thick when it spluttered, so I'm just drying this a bit more. and we'll do that one last. So let's get on with these. Okay, let's go. Right, so that is those four painted. I shall go off and clean my airbrush, and when we come back we'll get the tape off. If these can stop falling over and landing on the paint, that'd be great. We'll get the tape off and see how they came out. So, back in a moment. Alright, while the gold is drying, what we're going to do next is some pre-shading. Now, you've seen me do this before if you watch my other build series, but if this is your first one, what we're going to do is basically use Tamiya XF85, which is rubber black. It's like a very dark grey. It's not black itself, it's very dark grey. You can use black, but black's a bit harsh, especially when you're painting these things white. I'm going to use the rubber black to just, well, low light effectively. I'm going to go along any panel lines, any edges, and any recesses, so that when we paint the white or whatever colour over the top lightly and build it up in light coats, you have a natural shadow where the darker paint is underneath. And then once it's fully painted, it just gives it that little bit of variation, so you get, say, a white panel that just darkens a little bit towards the edge of a panel line. That's the idea, basically. Now, there is some planning involved. You can see here on this part of the foot, this part isn't primed at all, and the inside is. When you put this foot together, it's two pieces, a left and a right. They go together like this. This part inside, you might be able to see some of that, even though there's the big ankle mechanism in there. You might be able to see some of this, so I'm going to pre-shade in here, but I'm just going to go quite dark. I'm not going to do all around the lines, so that when it's built, it just looks painted but dark in there. The other reason I'm doing it this way and it's not primed here is because when you put the foot together, I'll have a big seam line here that I'll need to fill. So there's no point painting or priming this now, because when I come to fill it, I'll have to take all that off again. So the way it will work is I'll pre-shade in here, foot will be assembled with all the components, this is left unprimed, I fill it with some glue. When that's all done, I mask off the ankle mechanisms, I prime it, and then I paint it, prime it, pre-shade it and paint it as I'm doing now. But it's just, you have to plan these things with some parts, like if you can see inside something, but you're going to have to fill a seam line like on the shoulders. So similar thing on the shoulders, I'll paint the insides that you can see from underneath, so I'll pre-shade those and paint them, but then I'll do the outside when I'm gluing it, after I've glued it all together. And with the head, I haven't got it here with me, but with the head I've not primed the outside at all, but I am going to prime and paint the face parts. The head will be assembled with the face in place, the face will be masked off, and then that will be filled, the seam lines will be filled and be fully painted, but the face will be protected by the masking. What I'm going to paint and prime is a pre-shade, I'm really confused now, is the interior bit up the back where you can see like the back, around the back of the neck, because you can see that. So, I've got my rubber black, I'm just going to give it a good shake, and what we're going to do is do a 50-50 mix in the airbrush of the thinner and the rubber black. Now, unfortunately, like a spoon, I actually lost the lid to my airbrush. I'm going to have to be super careful while I do this that I don't spill paint everywhere. So let me turn everything on and we'll get to the pre-shading. Okay, now that I'm going to do this, I'm going to go a lot closer than I did previously with the airbrush. I'm not going to pull very far on the trigger, because I don't need a lot of paint. I just need a reasonably thin black line. So let's go in and do this and see how it comes out. I'm just building it up slowly. I'm only pulling the trigger back a little tiny way, really not much at all, because I don't need it to be that much paint. But what I want is this soft blurry edge, because it's supposed to be a shadow. I don't need a crisp line, and it doesn't matter if you go a bit wonky or wobbly here and there. It doesn't need to be neat and tidy. It just needs to follow the panel line or the edge, or wherever you're doing it. And I'm going to do it around the edge of this bit because the yellow piece goes in, but I want a shadow around the edge. And I'm just building the colour up slowly. I'm not pulling back far at all. You see, I'm not being particularly careful or neat. Doesn't have to look pretty. It's functional, not aesthetic. Okay, now we'll do this edge here. Remember to go for air first and then the paint, so it also allows you to figure out where the airbrush is pointing before you apply the paint. So go with the paint, it's there, I can just drag it along here. And we're done. So what I need to do now is turn this off so you can hear me. What I need to do now is go and do that on all the other kit parts that are external armour or anything that's got panel lining and pre-shading, so that when this is painted you'll have shadows. Again, don't worry if it's not neat, it doesn't matter, it's just adding dark areas or darker areas. So I shall jump to time lapse and we shall crack on. Right, okay, so everything has now been pre-shaded. You can see everything's now got its black lines, and like I said, you don't need to be neat and tidy or anything like that. It doesn't really matter, you're not going to see most of this. All the gold on the gunmetal parts has now dried nicely. As you hope you can see, it has come out rather well. Not bad, eh? There's a couple of little bits of overspray here and there, but luckily they're just where the tape didn't quite cover an area. But luckily they're all in parts that you won't see anyway. So what is next? Next is the base coat. I need to start painting all the white bits white, all the blue bits blue, all the red bits red, and so on and so on. And for these colours, I am going to initially, because there'll be a couple of multi-level painting on here, I'm going to initially be using Tamiya XF2 flat white, XF63 German grey, XF3 flat yellow, XF8 flat blue, and XF7 flat red. I sometimes tend to mix a lot of custom colours, but for this one I think because it's the Granddaddy Gundam and it's kind of the original, I'm just going to stick with the primary colours. They'll still be dark and a bit more darker than normal and shaded and weathered, but I think just as a tip of the hat I'll stick to the original colours rather than go all custom. What else have we got? One thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to time lapse the whole thing because I know this video is going on a bit. And for some interior parts, you'll see me like spraying the outside of the leg, you know, say for example white, and I'm going to do the same thing, a mist coat first, then a couple more coats maybe depending on how much I want the shadow to show through, and I'll focus more paint on the inside of panels, like in the centre of panels, so it goes from white to a faded white round the panel line. It's easier said, it's not easy to do. For some interior parts, like inside the foot where I said I'd spray the rubber black, because you're not really going to see that much, but you're going to see something. So I'm just going to do a light misty coat of white on these parts, and same inside the shoulders and other places. Just so you can see inside, but you can see it's just dark. It's painted, but it's dark, and it'll just look like a light medium grey. Sort of slightly patchy, because it wants to look slightly dirty. And obviously I'm not painting the outsides like I said in the last section. So as I drop pieces everywhere, I will go and get my airbrush full of some XF2 flat white, and we shall start the painting. Okay, and so on with the fast forward button. Whee! And we're back. Well, all the main base paint colours are done. My God, what an absolute pain that painting session was. It was about 4 hours it took me. And it took me that long because everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I had some paint spill out of the cup at one point. About 5 or 6 times the nozzle and needle were getting clogged up with dried out paint. So I had to stop, clean the brush out, refill the paint, wasting paint of course, especially with the white. What an absolute pain in the bum. So I had to stop and clean the brush out about 5 or 6 times. The red just didn't want to cover the shield at all, so it took me ages to get the shield covered. What else? I'm sure there were other things that went... Oh yeah, the camera, which is currently got like a little grip thing, and it's stuck via the power of the vacuum to my overhead light, which is pretty good, but it kept falling off. It fell off about 4 times. I had to edit those bits out. So yeah, it took about 4 hours, so what a pain. Not my most enjoyable painting session ever. Anyway, it's all done now. As you can see, everything is looking nice and spanky. I've got the shadowing, so it's still there. It's still visible. You might not be able to see it on screen, or if you can, it might be a bit over the top on screen. But in reality, it's actually quite subtle. Because I've painted these, I can actually start to assemble them now. I am toying with the idea of painting this part, somehow masking it off and painting it. I'm not too fussed about the paint down in these holes because you won't see those anyway. So I'm toying with. I've just seen a big ripple of paint there, so that's going to have to be covered up with some weathering. Joy. Yeah, at one point the white paint was too thin, so I've got like a little pool of paint there and a little bit there, but that's something that'll be hidden with weathering, so I'm not too bothered. So yeah, that's the shield done. The feet came out quite nicely actually, considering everything else went horribly to pot. They've come out rather cool. I did toy with the idea of painting the verniers here silver or like gunmetal, but to be honest, I just couldn't figure out the best way to mask these circles off, so I decided I'll just weather them to look different. I'll weather them into a darker colour. The backpack, sadly I'm painting it German grey, and it's completely hiding the pre-shading lines, so for a lot of it there's no pre-shading anymore, so I'll have to bring that back with weathering. The blue came out quite nicely. A little bit darker than I thought it would do. And again, the pre-shading is probably a bit too subtle on here. It might look more drastic on camera, but it's pretty subtle. But that will come back with gunk washes and other things. And the white came out okay. I've decided I'm going to paint these bits gunmetal, so I'm going to have to mask these off. These are like little thrusters or verniers with the cover that goes over them, so I'm going to mask those off and paint those separately. And I have also made a decision, sort of. Some of the panels that are going to be different colours, like this panel here. I was debating whether to mask them off and spray them. However, what I think I might do instead, because I don't want to risk damaging this part, I don't want to gloss or matte varnish it just yet and then put paint on top. I'm going to have to gloss varnish it at some point, but while I'm painting coloured panels, I don't want to have to gloss varnish it and then paint a coloured panel. But some of the panels are going to be like a light grey colour or a sort of very light tan colour. I think what I might do actually is use oil paints later on, before I do all the main weathering, just to do some very fine, not quite a wash, but a very fine tint with some oil paints, just so I can, to a certain degree, maintain some of the shadowing I've already got. And also, it's just a lot less hassle than masking it off. Put the head together a little bit. These are all the parts. This outside part isn't painted. I'll be masking the face off to prime and pre-shade and paint the outside. But I've got the face in there just so that I can build the head, fill the seam, and then prime and paint the whole head. This will be masked off. I've not got the eyes in there yet because I'll be doing matte varnishes at some point. Because what I'll do is I'll get this part of the head. How am I going to do this now? I'm trying to plan it in my head. I need to matte varnish, take this out, matte varnish it, put it back in again. Then mask it off, put the head together, seal the gaps with some glue, mask that off. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out as I go along and it's breaking my brain. So anyway, yeah, so it's all gone on, despite the absolute trauma that was the painting session, it's all come on quite nicely. So, that's going to do us for this time. When we come back, I'm not sure what we'll be doing, but we'll be doing something interesting. But thank you very much for watching. As always, stay tuned for the next episode, whenever that will be. And stick around for the Destiny Gundam build. I'll be posting up videos of that soon. just waiting on some last little bits to turn up, and then I can start that build, or at least start filming it in a diary. So yeah, take care of yourselves. We shall meet again soon, but until then, adios amoebas.